Okay, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me back there? Yep? Okay, good, right. So my name's Stephen Gowan. I'm the Academic Integrity Resource Manager here at the University of York, and I'd like to start by welcoming you all here to the academic community, okay? So I'm going to talk a little bit today about academic integrity in practice and what it really means. I'm part of the learning enhancement team, so I don't know if you've already seen, we have some flyers downstairs, but also part of the team there is the writing center, whereas if you need assistance with your writing, you can go to, and also there is the math skills center if you need support with statistics and maths. Now, the resources that I'm responsible for are, the first one is the academic integrity tutorial. So have you heard of that? Yep, have you done it? Anybody done it yet? Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. There's our referencing and style guides and our website on there, which is just the university website /integrity. You can find the information there. There's the email as well. This emails if you have any problems with the tutorial, or if you have any specialist sort of referencing questions that you might ask that aren't answered on the website or in the guide, then you can drop me an email, okay, if there's anything you're concerned about. And finally, I have a team of postgraduates who run Turnitin workshops. Have you heard of Turnitin before? Anybody used it? What do you think? Smiles? Nods? Yeah, it does have its uses, okay? So first of all, I'd like to point out that we run workshops every Wednesday for this, okay? So you can sign up for them on the VLE. But check with your department first, because a lot of departments do run workshops for postgraduates. Now, Turnitin can be useful. It's usually only useful if you put a draft in and then check your work. Some people don't need to use it, but other people find it useful because sometimes it can point out high text matches and things like that, okay? That you might not have been aware of in your writing process or your note-taking. So when you write it down, so don't do it straight away. I suggest if your department isn't running one, wait until you've got a draft of your work, then sign up for a workshop. That way you can go into the workshop, run a draft through, see your report, and then think, okay, I'm fine, or think, oh, I might want to think about. There's a lot of quotations in there from one text, so it can help you to identify those. What I'm going to talk about today is the compulsory tutorial. What is academic integrity, okay? Because it can be quite an abstract concept. We've also got the factors that affect your study, and I think these are really very key in integrity, okay? And this leads on to academic integrity in practice, what it actually means when you're studying within the university. And finally, I'll look at the referencing guides that we have. So the academic integrity tutorial is compulsory at the moment for all students in the university. We are working on one for postgraduate researchers for next year. However, at the moment, this is something that all students have in common. It introduces academic integrity, looks at misconduct, and also looks at the useful resources. And you complete it online. So if you go into the Yorkshire VLE, you should all have a module. If you don't have a module in there, you can speak to your departments, okay? And then they can speak to me. We'll make sure you get on one. Now, the reason we have this is because it helps you to become aware about this. Some of the stuff you might know already, but it's very thorough and it takes you through all different types of integrity issues and misconduct, and also refers to the policy of the university. So familiarize yourself with this. The UK, we can be quite strict, especially if people are coming from other countries, and there may be differences as well in expectations. So it's your responsibility to learn about these. The integrity tutorial is done in 3 sections. So what you do is you log on, you go to the first section, read through, do the test at the end. Now, the biggest problem that people have with the test usually is that some of the questions are a bit tricky. So you might not read them properly. You might think you've got them right, so you need to check. Once you've completed that test, then you move on to the second section. Again, read through the information, do the test. Third section, finally you'll get a completion certificate online. But it'll also be logged on the computer system as well. So you don't need to print off the certificate if you don't want to. So remember, you need 100% in all of these tests to complete it. And it's also something that you can come back to as well. So you have to complete it. If you're on a one-year master's, for example, you need to check in your handbook, but usually by the end of the first term, or before when you submit your first assignment. This is just to show that you're familiar with the rules and regulations and also the concepts that the university abides by. So what is academic integrity? Sometimes this can seem like an abstract sort of concept, as I said before. Who's heard this term before? A show of hands? Who's heard it? Okay, so some of you are familiar with it. In order to understand it, you really need to understand the whole of sort of academia, okay? So on your course, and most of you, you're all postgraduates, yeah? Are you on master's courses? Yeah? Any PhDs? Few PhDs and that, okay. So you need to understand what's expected of you on the course. So first of all is ask yourself, what is a postgraduate qualification? And there's lots of books and things available in the library, study guides, writing master's dissertations, undertaking PhD, authoring a PhD, that you can read. And at this stage, for you at the start of the year, especially if you're unfamiliar with the UK, they can be really useful for you. And often people don't pick up on these until it's too late in the term. So go into the library and have a look there, because these are written by experienced practitioners. Also ask yourself, what is the point of a university, okay? And this leads you on to some deeper questions as well about what is academia, what is research, and then finally on to questions about what is knowledge, and also how is it constructed. And once you understand this and you understand the academic community and how referencing plays a role in this, you can really get a proper idea about academic integrity. And it answers a lot of the questions that you might have. For example, should I reference this, for example? I get lots of students asking me, how do I reference this? Do I need to reference this? I've read this, but I'm referring to this. So it's all about understanding that process, and it will help you. So understanding the system can then help you to understand your place in it and also academic integrity. You'll cover a lot of this stuff in the tutorial, so I don't want to duplicate the stuff you're going to go through on that, okay? So you might have some questions which are answered by the tutorial. However, honesty, trust, fairness, respect, responsibility, these are seen as the 5 pillars, okay? Do you all consider yourself honest people? Yes, usually, okay? So this is usually a bit of a strange part of my role, is that I'm not accusing you all of being liars or anything like that. I'm just helping you to understand that it is very complex doing a postgraduate degree. And sometimes situations can arise, and this is why misconduct occurs. So it's all about being these things, honest and trusting people within the academic context. So I've got a quote here. And I've cited it there. So it's the values, behaviors, and conduct of academics in all aspects of their practice. So it doesn't just refer to referencing. However, it's often seen as that. It's all different, so how you carry out your research, being aware of your bias, for example. Now, academic misconduct is one part of that people often associate with the integrity. It is part of it, obviously. You need to be aware of this. But in practice, it's more complex, so I'll talk about that in a moment. What types of misconduct have you heard of? Anybody? Sorry? Behavior, what? Yeah, what type of behavior? Yep, it can be disciplinary. How about the more academic types as well? Plagiarism, have you heard this one? Okay, so you need to be very aware about this. The academic integrity tutorial goes into depth on that. Any others? Plagiarism's the main one. There's a few others as well. So these are some that come up in the tutorial. There are some more ones that you need to be aware about. Now, misconduct is not just cheating, okay? Cheating is sort of the deliberate attempt. At postgraduate level, you need to be aware. You may unknowingly commit misconduct, okay? However, it's still misconduct if you think about conduct and misconduct being improper conduct, okay? So be very aware, and the academic integrity tutorial takes you through this. Also, it's something that you should discuss with other people as well. Now, what I mostly see with students, and especially with dealing with academic integrity, is that it's all about controlling the factors that affect your study. Now, and these factors are the same whether you're successful or whether you're unsuccessful, okay? So you've got to think about these factors. So what factors affect your study here? Anybody? What's a big factor for you when you're studying? Resources, good, yep. Anything else? Environment, yep. Sorry, somebody else said one? How about on the UK Masters especially? How long is it? 1 year, for a lot of you, will be 1 year. So what's a factor there? Time is a big factor, okay? So all of these different things work in. So it's all about, so these are some factors. Obviously there's more, and you've got to think about these. I want you to engage in these. So there's time, there's your knowledge, like you said about the resources. Now the university has excellent resources if you go over to the library. There's also a lot available online as well, through your search as well. Your ability, your skills, your language as well. If your second language is English and you've come here to improve your English, it's not just a passive thing. When you're here, you really need to work on it. And that will improve in your writing as well. Also, if English is your native language, you also need to care about learning the specialist language and also academic language. Academic language is nobody's sort of first language. It's something that we all learn and we all come into this community using. So you need to be aware of those factors. Some other factors, confidence is also a factor. You may not perform as you expect in your first few essays, for example, but you've got to know how to perform afterwards, bounce back. And even if you're very confident, you need to think, how can I do things better? Not being overconfident can also be a problem. Independence. This is a very key factor, especially at postgraduate level here. Often you hear postgraduate students say, oh, people haven't told me that. It's your responsibility to find out. You have all the information. I expect you're probably on a point of information overload at the minute. You've got all of these handbooks, yeah? You're sitting down reading them, but you read after a while, when you're scrolling down and it stops going in. So you need to think about planning your time to come back to those things later and being very aware of your attention span. If you study for 45 minutes, take a little break, and then you can come back refreshed. So that's a big part of that self-awareness. Also, your social group. When I was doing my master's, I got in contact with a couple of people, and we were really committed to doing the best that we could on the course. We ended up looking at all the materials together. We were a bit sad, I think you could say. We were a bit very into it, but the fact is that this is, serious now. You're doing a postgraduate, so you want to do the best you can. So think about who you're associating with, who you're talking to, what you're talking about. So all of these factors may be in there. Pressure and procrastination are two big P's with the plagiarism as well. You all like Facebook? Yeah, Facebook does have its uses. It's very useful to keep in contact with people. However, I often walk around the computer rooms and you see people on Facebook, looking up things, and often it's procrastination. Sometimes it's legitimate, but you need to really control this. Now, pressure can lead to procrastination. In some cases, you're procrastinating because you need a break. It's better to plan that in there. So I think you really need to be aware about these factors. So you need to prioritize, you need to plan your time, you need to prepare, participate. So if you're in a lecture and you think you're being a bit quiet, don't be afraid, okay? Because when you speak, then the more you speak, the more your confidence will improve there. You also need to perform and concentrate on progress. Try not to be looking at everybody all the time. Be very self-aware about your own progress in there. So if you perform in one way in your first assignment, make sure you do better the next time. You correct your mistakes. Because sometimes you're so busy looking at the people, oh, they're doing so well, that it can create more pressure for yourself. So step back and reflect. Now, I'll just talk about another factor here, is your influences. So where do your influences come from? Sometimes you've got biases that you're not even aware of, and this is a part of self-awareness within referencing even makes you aware of that. So when you're reading things, you put a citation in there, that means that you're saying, oh, that's come from there, that's where that's come from. And that's where this sort of academic integrity brings you to a higher level of thinking in a way. So one thing is your ideas come from is your primary data, your experience. Now this depends on what subject you're in, science, social science, humanities. It's all done in a different way. But if you think about observations as being one, if you observe something, if we all observe something, a fight in the middle of the room here, we'll all have different perspectives on it, okay? So it's all about being aware of your own perspective, your own bias. Then, afterwards, let's say we all write a paper about that fight, looking at it from different perspectives. We'll really have, that'll be secondary data, and that'll be very much from different people's perspectives. So when you're reading other articles, you've got to think, you've got to be critical of it. You've got to think, how have they done their research? Why have they done their research? Where is it from? The context. So with citations, you think about, usually in an in-text citation, what information do you have? Anybody? So in a citation, if you're using Harvard style, what do you put in there? Name? Yeah, in the reference list, yeah. And in the citation, it's just usually the author and the date, because that gives you a lot of information there to go on. And it also gives you a point, this is why it's called referencing, a referencing point for that. So you think, if there's a paper from 2014 by one author, you've got another paper from before, let's say 1980, that person has changed in that time. And you need to be very aware of this, okay? So they might have completely changed their whole ideas. People often do this. But it's just being aware about this. So develop this academic awareness. So the ability of master's students I'm talking about, and if you're at PhD level, you can take these on even further, what you're expected to do. So, yeah, dealing with complex issues. If you just have a look at this for a moment, I'll give you some time to read through. The QAA is the Quality Assurance Agency for higher education in this country, okay, just for reference. So thinking about academic integrity in the context of these things here doesn't necessarily explicitly mention it, but you've got to deal with those complex issues. So creativity here is an issue. How do you be creative? How do you know you're creating something new if you're not aware of your influences, what you've read, how that's affected you? You might think that something's your own idea. However, when you start to look really at the referencing there, you actually see, oh yeah, I got that from there. Or I've put these two together to get this. That's a bit of creativity, a bit of what we call synthesis. So making judgments. Sometimes we talk about judging things, being critical. It doesn't necessarily mean criticizing something in the negative sense, but just asking questions of it. Communicating clearly. Specialists, in this case academics, non-specialists, depends on your field. And here, originality is an issue. Thinking about that. Well, if you think about things realistically, well, there's only one of you, okay? So if you're reading things and putting ideas in, then your perspective will be original in itself. But it's all about identifying where your part stands within your paper, you know, where your voice is, where your academic voice is. And finally, acting autonomously. Here you can read independently and professionally. Now, professionalism within the academic community means referencing and referring to other people. You'll be working with lecturers and professors here, and you'll be reading their books. So it's a good point here. Don't just think about them as books. These are people's hard work and also their ideas, in some cases their life work, their philosophy within a book or an academic paper. So how are these assessed, mostly in universities? How are they assessed? Anybody? Swimming? Do we assess it for a swimming competition? Essays, yeah. So essays doesn't necessarily mean writing, okay? Writing is one element, and you can't think, oh, I didn't write, often people, I didn't write a good essay, but I think you've got to think about things more in practice, that writing is the end point of a research process. It's not even the end point in a way, because then people go on to read it, and then it goes on from there. So it's just a point within the academic process. So when you're thinking about writing an essay, a thesis, you've got to be thinking about your references. Where is that information coming from? The primary data, which will be your own research, the secondary data, which will be the reading that you've done around that. Depending on your subject, it may be in different quantities, okay? So in some papers, there's only a couple of references, if you're doing experiments, for example, in mathematics. In other papers, there might be hundreds of references. So it's your responsibility to try and find out within your field what the accepted practices are. So reading, understanding, and questioning. What you often see with people using quotations, for example, is that they just cherry pick, we call it. They don't really read the whole article. You've got an idea in your head, and you want evidence to prove that. You go in and you think, oh, that supports me. You might not be taking it in the correct context. So it's all about reading the whole paper and trying to provide your own little summary of this, perhaps in an annotated bibliography or something that can help you in your research. Questioning what you're reading. There's good ways to read papers and write down questions about it. How did he come to this conclusion? You know, ask these sort of things. If a paper, for example, is written about the UK education system, does that apply in the American or the Chinese education system? What factors are affecting it? That's just from my background in educational research, for example. You've got to take good notes. This is really key. Some people come, oh, I need to do the reference list after they've written it. That's not the best practice. It is one way to do it. However, the best way is you get your notes, you take a full reference, you've got your citation there, page numbers. Use quotations within your notes so you know what's a quotation, paraphrases, and then sometimes I'll use a star for my own idea, you know, write it in a different font perhaps or a different color. So you're aware of your thinking process as well within there. This is the next one's quite a key point, is taking time to think and reflect. If you're just reading things and putting all these ideas in, and you don't take time to think, then where is your own interpretation going to come from? So have that time planned in with your research there. So use the sources in your work and acknowledge the sources. I'll talk about that in a moment with the referencing. So referencing, sometimes when I ask people, why do we reference? They say avoiding plagiarism. It's much more than that. It's part of the whole academic process. I'll just give you a moment to read through this. So you can find this book's in the library, Neville there. There's some excellent information on referencing. It has a reference to it in the academic integrity tutorial. So think about this when you're referencing, okay? Think about the broader implications of what your reference means. So in order to help you here, one of the things that I'm responsible for is these referencing guides here. Now, you need to find out which one's used in your department. This is usually in the department handbook. And some departments have slight variations, but these are the main styles. So I suggest that you get this. You can download it from our website. The web address is there at the bottom. Go on, we've got a PDF, download it. We also have a drop-down menu of commonly cited sources that you can access on there. So go to the website. It's a good idea to try and read through this before you start taking your notes and before you start reading, and then before you do the essay again. I'm not saying pour through it in great detail, just have a look through, familiarize yourself with it. If you're taking good references in your notes, when you come to write your dissertations, your essays, it's so much easier, okay? And then you're a lot more aware about what are you actually saying within that. As I said before, if you've got any questions, you can email integrity@York. Yep. Yes, within your department they may offer workshops on them. Usually they have, for example in law, they'll have an Oscola, they'll discuss that. And that's something you can talk to people within your department. If there isn't anything available, you can get together a group of people from your course if you're interested and email me and we'll see if we can get together to discuss them. The mechanics of it is pretty simple once you get that down, you know. Is it citation style? Is it footnotes? Once you get that down, it's all right, but then you start to ask your questions. Usually we see a process with students, they come in, they're not referencing enough. Then they go through the reference too much, and then finally you get it right. Because when you start really understanding referencing, you're thinking, oh, where did that idea come from? Where did that idea come from? And you start putting in loads of references. So remember to try and identify your own voice within there. So speaking of references, there's my references. I don't think you don't need to write any of them down. And so these are the resources. So I'd just like to ask, are there any more questions here? Any questions? Okay, I'll be around for a little while afterwards if you want to ask me any questions, okay? We have some flyers downstairs for the Learning Enhancement team, and it's very cold in here, isn't it? Thank you very much. Cheers. See you. Bye.